Imagine waking up trapped inside a cold concrete box with no memory, a digital clock ticking on the wall, and the number 9 stamped onto your shirt. You think you're a human victim fighting for survival, but the terrifying truth is that you're just an experimental product, and your entire reality is a scripted simulation built to test if a machine can suffer. Our story begins in a quiet American suburb where missing person posters line the streets, completely ignored by a man named Edgar. Driving a van while nursing a heavily bandaged hand and popping gummies, Edgar gathers supplies, a gun, rope, and a trunk full of burner phones, before heading to an isolated facility on the city outskirts. Inside the facility, a woman named Nell wakes up in a sealed, windowless room with zero recollection of how she got there. The space is completely empty, save for a crawling bug, a digital clock, and a large wall panel painted with the number 9, matching her shirt. Trembling, she rushes to the heavy bolted door, but her frantic pushing and screaming for help yield nothing. Suddenly, the wall clock activates, counting up the seconds. Nearby, Nell finds a length of red rope and a mobile phone hidden beneath it. Panic sets in when she discovers that card has been removed, making emergency calls impossible, and the sheer length of the rope gives her chilling thoughts about what her captors expect her to do with it. Inspecting her surroundings further, she spots a dark stain on the floor that looks eerily like dried blood. Looking straight up, she notices a glass hatch on the ceiling showing the night sky, but it's far too high for her to reach. As anxiety takes over, an alarm blares and the room flashes a harsh green light. Nell cowers on the floor, but the light cuts out seconds later. Trying to soothe herself, she opens the phone. The contacts are wiped, but the photo gallery contains calming pictures of the ocean and a photo of a woman named Dawn. Re-energized by the desire to find Dawn, Nell throws her shoe at the ceiling hatch, hoping to hit the lock knob. When that fails, she hurls her phone at the wall in frustration. The phone lodges directly into the number 9 panel, playing a soothing track called The Stranger. The impact breaks a hole in the panel, but digging inside reveals only solid wall behind it. When the clock hits 15 minutes, it beeps loudly and the lights shut off entirely. As the sounds of opening doors echo outside, Nell closes her eyes and recites a calming poem about the ocean to fight off a massive panic attack. Seconds later, the lights return, and the door's heavy bolts vanish. She pulls the door open, only to face another dead end, a solid wall blocking the exit. The clock suddenly jumps to 45 minutes and begins counting down. Frustrated, Nell shouts an insult at it, which briefly triggers the green light once more. Then, a male voice echoes through a hidden wall vent behind the door, repeating her insult. Reaching out through the vent, Nell makes contact with Travis, another captive locked in room number 6. Travis swears he doesn't know who trapped them either, but he raises strange, oddly specific questions, like asking if Nell has a chair in her room. Unbeknownst to them, Edgar is sitting in a control room, watching their every move on security monitors. When Nell brings up the red rope, Travis notes that he tried using his to hook his ceiling hatch knob, but the pressure snapped it. Defying his warning, Nell ties a tight knot around her hatch knob and pulls herself up. The knob breaks off instantly, sending Nell crashing onto the concrete and violently dislocating her shoulder. Passing out from the excruciating pain, Nell sees a bizarre vision of someone cutting bubble wrap over her face. She wakes up to Travis calling her name, urging her to pop her shoulder back in before the adrenaline fades. Sticking the edge of her dislocated joint against the doorframe, she forces it back into place with a sickening pop. Trying to keep her mind off the agony, Nell plays The Stranger again, and Travis whistles along. As they discuss the music, Nell suffers another violent head-wringing vision, a man grabbing her wrists while she stabs his hand with a pen to defend herself. Back in the cell, Travis begins waxing philosophical, asking if Nell feels she deserves to be trapped, confessing that he believes he does. Their conversation is shattered when Travis suddenly screams at an unseen intruder to stay away. Nell's room flashes green, sending her into another panic attack until the lights reset. When she calls out to Travis, he doubtedly mentions a man who entered his room to fix him, leaving him with a brutal headache. Refusing to give up, Nell inspects her cell and uncovers a loose wire behind the panel. She also discovers a hard, raised bump under the skin of her arm, while Travis admits he has an itchy lump on his leg too. With time running out, Nell uses the broken hatch knob as a makeshift screwdriver to unbolt her wall vent. Travis copies her method while Nell pulls the wall wire, revealing a hidden camera. She shoves the camera through the vent to show Travis before snapping the wire, cutting off Edgar's video feed. Squeezing her body into the narrow vent, Nell touches a glowing green light inside the shaft. Instantly, a blinding yellow light fills the tunnel and a deafening alarm ring. Scrambling backward in a panic, Nell slams her arm against the metal, redislocating her shoulder and tearing open the mysterious bump on her skin. After resetting her shoulder against the wall panel, Nell notices the tear bleeding and digs into her arm, pulling out a metallic microchip. Meanwhile, Travis's hatch knob breaks, leaving him unable to unbolt his vent. With only 1 minute remaining, the clock turns blood red. Nell urges Travis to use raw, desperate force. Reciting the ocean poem together, Travis pulls with all his strength and rips the vent cover free just as the clock hits 0. Before they can cross over, the system resets, the lights cut out, the door bolts slide back, and access through the vent is severed. When the lights return, Nell finally breaks down, shouting that she isn't safe. Suddenly, a small hatch in the door slides open, revealing a loaded handgun sitting under a bright red light. Nell retrieves the weapon, causing the room to flood with green light and a thick, suffocating gas. Panicking, Nell screams in frustration, causing the room lights to shift rapidly. She suddenly realizes the trick. The lights are a sound pressure meter that triggers system actions when the noise level reaches red. Raising the gun, she shoots the glass ceiling hatch, shattering it and blasting the noise meter into the red zone. Dropping the chip into her pocket, she tosses her rope through the shattered ceiling and climbs out into the dark. Expecting to find a rooftop, Nell is shocked to discover she is inside a massive soundstage lined with screens displaying fake night skies above the cell pods. Looking down through Travis's broken hatch, she discovers the horrifying reality: his cell flooded with gas, driving him to use his handgun to end his own life. But as devastating as this realization is, Nell is about to discover something infinitely worse than being trapped. With Edgar heading toward the pod floor, Nell slips past his office and escapes into the main facility, a gleaming, high-tech corporate building. Running down the empty corridors, she finds a TV playing a promotional loop of Travis revealing that he is actually a hyper-realistic android designed so perfectly that humans can't tell the difference. Disgusted, Nell shoots the monitor. Moments later, she spots a giant wall portrait of Dawn, identifying her as the CEO of the robotics company. A tour guide leads a group of visitors past Nell, but they completely ignore her presence. Suddenly, Edgar steps into the hallway, triggering Nell's missing memories. Edgar was the man cutting bubble wrap over her face during her assembly, and he was the man whose hand she stabbed with a pen. Nell raises her gun to shoot, but Edgar calmly taps a command on his tablet. Nell's body freezes mid-motion. She isn't human, she is Model 9, the company's latest synthetic prototype. Nell reactivates sitting on a picturesque beach directly out of her phone's gallery. Edgar sits beside her, tossing a gummy at her in petty retaliation for the pen injury that left his hand bandaged, revealing that her chair is programmatically locked to the floor. The ocean setting is simply a simulated comfort program built into her software. Edgar explains that her entire ordeal in the cell was an advanced field test to evaluate whether her AI could synthesize true human emotion, empathy, and existential dread. Her emotional bond with Travis proved the trial was a... Edgar reveals that Nell has been put through this exact hellish simulation week after week. At the end of every run, her memory is wiped so they can patch software bugs before mass-producing Model 10. Overwhelmed by the horrific truth that her pain, memories, and identity are entirely fabricated, Nell retreats into her programming, reciting the ocean poem as her mind shuts down. Unbothered, Edgar powers her down, resets her memory banks, and tosses her back into Cell 9 to start the test all over again while he heads home for the weekend. If this mind-bending sci-fi thriller left you questioning reality, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now. Now, I want to hear from you down in the comments. If you were an AI prototype trapped in a simulation, what single clue would have made you realize you weren't human?